Let me go to a new screen. And what is modifier? People have been asking me this question: how to become good at reading? How to become a good reader? Well, I thought that to become a good reader, you must have good understanding of grammar. This is the most important thing, people. You must have a good understanding of grammar. Without proper understanding of grammar, you can never be. Can you be a good writer without having good grammar, people? This is a very simple question. So I will use reverse logic. Can you be a good writer without knowing grammar, right? So if without knowing grammar you can't be a good writer, then without knowing grammar, can you be a good reader? Because if writing needs grammar, then reading too needs grammar. Correct, people? And apart from knowing grammar, you must have good vocabulary. Correct, people? So my point is that, and this is for everyone's benefit, though we don't have direct questions from vocabulary and grammar, we must ensure that we are good in both the departments. Because so long as you're not good in grammar and vocabulary, your comprehension will never be good. No matter how much hard work you put in, your comprehension will always be incomplete. Why? Because your grammar is poor and your vocabulary is not up to the mark. Because grammar gives logic to language. Grammar gives logic to language, and vocabulary gives meaning to your ideas. And when they both come together, that is meaning plus logic, you have comprehension. So, in short, if you want to become a good reader, you must work on grammar and vocabulary. Vocabulary is a long term, right? It's a long term job. You cannot become good in vocabulary in a span of, let's say, 1 week or 10 days. I think a minimum of 2 months is what you need to get some kind of feel as to you are good in vocabulary or not. To get that feeling, yes, my vocabulary is improving or is it not improving. So 2 months is the bare minimum time that you need, firstly. And grammar is something that you can always work on. In fact, I always tell my students that in 1 month, with regular practice and regular reading, you can become good in grammar. Because grammar is all about concepts. You have 7 to 8 important concepts, and once you have understood those concepts, you become good in grammar. And today, we are going to do that concept which is very important when it comes to comprehension, and the concept is modifier. So let me start without any further delay as to what is modifier and what is the meaning of modifier, right? What do you mean by modify? Modify means to change, right? Modify means to change or to add or to improve, correct? So can I say that my sentences can be modified? And I will give you a very, very good example. John is rich, correct? So this is the subject, or I would say, let me put a simple example, right? Yes, to improvise. John died, correct? So John died. It's a very simple sentence, right? John is the subject and died is the verb, right, people? You can't have anything simpler. Can you have a simple sentence? Anything simpler than this? You cannot, right? John is the subject and died is the verb. The verb is in the past tense and the action is of death and the subject is John. So basically, this is a complete meaningful idea, right, people? So I want to modify this. So how would I modify John? I would say, poor John, right, died. So you read this sentence and now you read this sentence. Which has more information? Poor John died. Correct, people? So can I say that the word poor is basically a modifier? It's a modifier, right, people? The word poor is a modifier. I hope everyone is clear about it. So what can be a modifier, right? That is the question that we are going to ask. What can be a modifier? Poor is a modifier. Poor John died in the morning. So can I say that this too is acting like a modifier? Poor John died and the time of death is in the morning. So, right. So basically I'm coming to that. So adjectives. So basically a modifier, please understand, modifier can be a word, correct? Can you give me example of the word? The word poor is modifier, right? The word poor is modifier, correct? It's a word. An adjective can also be a modifier. An adverb can be a modifier. So any word can be a modifier. And what can that be? It has to be adjective. It has to be adverb, right? Nouns cannot be modifier. They can be modified, but they cannot act as modifier, right? For example, John is getting modified, but it is not modifying anything, correct people? So can I say adjectives and adverbs are modifier? Everyone is happy with this? Phrases can be modifiers. Now, my question is, you will ask me, sir, what are phrases? How many of you don't understand the meaning of don't understand the concept of phrase? If you don't know the concept of phrase, I can just give some time to it. But basically, a phrase is something which does not have a subject and a verb. It's as simple as that. Phrase is income. Yes, phrase is basically a collection of words that does not have a subject and a verb. I mean, it can be as simple as like this. Uh, the pen. Now, this is basically a phrase. Why? Because it has two words and it does not have any meaning. So this is basically a phrase. And you will ask me what kind of phrase? So what is the most important element here? The pen, right? It's a noun. So I would say it's a noun phrase. Correct, people? I hope you're following me. The most important item of this phrase is the pen. So it's a noun phrase. I can further build on this. I can say the pen on the table, right? This too is a noun phrase. Why? Because it speaks about the pen. And therefore, this too is a noun phrase. It's not a meaningful idea. It's a phrase. Correct? The pen is the most important element. And this is the modifying element for the pen. What kind of pen? The pen on the table. And the article the is also modifying the pen. So the key element is pen, and the others are basically a set of modifiers that are modifying the noun pen, and therefore I would call it as a noun phrase, right? So when I say in the morning, this too is a phrase, right, people? Everyone agrees with this. This too is a phrase, right? The way other words, right? It's too is a phrase. What is the phrase? What's the name of this phrase? It's a prepositional phrase. Why I am calling it as a prepositional phrase? Because the preposition is the most important element and it introduces the phrase to me. So in the morning, after the morning, right? Or something like this. So basically it shows relationship and therefore this becomes a prepositional phrase. So there are different kinds of phrases. You have noun phrase, you have prepositional phrase, and there are many other kinds of phrases. Phrases can act like modifiers. I will give an example here, and the example is John died, right? So when you say John died, and you say John died in the morning, then isn't this modifying basically? What kind of modification is it doing? It's basically modifying by introducing time. So when you say John died, it is meaningful, but it does not have that much information. But when you say John died in the morning, then you say, oh, John died in the morning. Poor John died in the morning. So what am I doing, people? By adding modifiers, I am giving more and more information to my sentence, or I am adding more and more information to my sentence, right? So what do modifiers do? They add information to your sentence. And by using modifiers, I can make my sentences longer and longer. You all people agree with this? Shall I give you some examples? People, any doubt you have, please understand this concept, because when it comes to reading, you must never focus on the modifiers. Shall I go to the next? I will go to the next screen here. So let's take this now. Okay. Peter walked out. It's a simple sentence, right? It's a meaningful idea. Peter is the subject, walked is the verb, and out is basically the adverb. So I can say Peter walked out. So can I say, I will add a few modifiers. Okay, the first modifier is in the middle of the session, comma, Peter walked out. Is it fine, people? In the middle of the session, Peter walked out. Can I say this is a modifier? It's a kind of a modifier. See, people, let's not get into the. It's a modifying element. Anything that adds additional information, I would use the term modifier. Yes, people, anything that adds additional information is a modifier. Okay, so in the middle of the session is, yes, this is basically a prepositional phrase acting like an adverb. It's a prepositional phrase, but the function is that of an adverb. Are you getting my? It's modifying when Peter walked out. So basically, the action of walking is getting modified, and therefore it's kind of an adverb. Why? Because it is modifying walking out. So let's not worry about what is phrase and what is prepositional phrase, what is appositive phrase, because the moment you start worrying about the nomenclature, you get into that difficult grammar part. My suggestion is that you don't give any name to it, you just call it as a modifier. To keep things simple, we can give names to it. I will call it as a prepositional phrase. Prepositional phrase acting like an adverb. Why? Because when you say Peter walked out, then you express the time of walking out, and the time of walking is all in the middle of the session. So you have adverb of time. So any phrase that gives you the information of time becomes an acts like basically an adverb phrase. But this is basically a prepositional phrase acting like an adverb. Okay. So in the middle of the session, Peter walked out. Can I say in the middle of the session? So I will write the sentence again, people, for your information. In the middle of the session, right? Peter, and Peter is basically the son of a goldsmith, right? The son of a goldsmith, correct? Comma, walked out. Full stop. What are the modifiers, people? I have to put a comma here. People understand, I have to put a comma. What are the modifiers? Yes, in the middle of the session, the son of a goldsmith. So you have modifier 1 and you have modifier 2. Correct, people? What is the main idea? Can you tell me what is the main element here? What is the main element here? The main element is Peter, which is the subject, and the other main element is the action which Peter is doing, and that is of walking out. So when you see a complex sentence, then what should you focus on the most, people? You must focus on what? The subject and the verb, right? So when you're reading, you just have to focus on the subject and the verb. The rest is unimportant, at least in the very first reading. In the very first reading, you must not bother about the additional information. What you should bother about is the main idea that Peter walked out. He walked out in the middle of the class. He's son of a goldsmith. That's fine. I'm not bothered about it. So a good reader will say, okay, let's not bother about this nonsense stuff. I will bother about only what? Peter walked out. Mayank, the session is getting recorded, so you can visit the session again on YouTube. Don't worry about it. Okay, I'm recording the session, people, so you can always revisit the session on YouTube. Fine, people. So are we clear about how to read? I mean, in the sense that how to basically remove unnecessary information from the sentence, right? So I can add more and more information. In the middle of the session, Peter, the son of a goldsmith, walked out, right? So I can say in the middle of the session, Peter, the son of a goldsmith, walked out, right? An action that was not much liked by his teacher, right? So I am adding some more information to my sentence. What I have done, I have added a modifier at the end of the sentence. What it says, in the middle of the session, Peter, the son of a goldsmith, walked out. An action that was not much liked by his teacher. So what kind of action? What is this action? The action of walking out, right? So this is again a modifier. So we have modifier M3, correct? Are we clear about this, people? So you have different sets of modifiers at different places, right? You have different sets of modifiers at different places, right? Now, the placement of modifier is very important. So modifiers have different functions, people. See, this is one kind of modifier. This is the other kind of modifier. And the third is other kind of modifier. In fact, there are different kinds of modifiers having different functions. For example, this is basically a prepositional phrase. This is basically a noun phrase. This is basically a summative modifier. It's a summative modifier. That means basically it sums up everything, right? There are resumptive modifiers. So different modifiers have different functions and therefore they have different names. But what we must learn is they all add information. They all add additional information. They modify something, right? They modify a noun or a pronoun or an. So different modifiers have different functions. They modify something or the other. This is what we have in short, right? Let's go to a new slide here. I will just scroll this down. I will not go to a new page slide here, and I will write something, right? John is rich, correct? A simple sentence, right, people? You can't have a sentence more simple than this, right? John is rich, correct? So let me add few modifiers to it, right? I would say John, right? Who is my neighbor is rich, correct, people? John, who is my neighbor is rich. So John, is this the modifier, right, people? It's a modifier, correct? Is it a phrase, people, or is it a clause? Is it a phrase or is it a clause? Please give me the name. What? It's a modifier, right? Is it a phrase or is it a clause? It's a clause. Why it's a clause, people? Because you have the verb is, right? And you have who, which is the subject, correct? And it is a dependent clause. Why? Because it is not meaningful. It's a dependent clause because it's not a meaningful idea. So this dependent clause is modifying what? It's a modifier modifying what? It's modifying John. Right? So can I say John is my neighbor, right? John is my neighbor. John is my neighbor's. Let's have this way, okay? John met Mark, who is rich. Correct? So here you have John, who is my neighbor, is rich, and here you say John met Mark, who is rich. Who is rich in this case, people? In this case, who is rich? Mark. In this case, who is rich? John. In the first case, John. Why is it so, people? Why there are two different? Answers? Why not Mark? Why not John in this case? Because who refers to what? Mark. The positioning. So the modifiers modify that which is closest to them. Correct, people? Modifiers modify that which is closest to them. Am I right, people? That means the placement of modifiers is very important. The placement of modifier is important, correct? So let me give you some examples regarding the placement of modifier. We all have heard about William Shakespeare, and I will create a sentence about Shakespeare. I would say William, right? I would say William Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet, correct? William Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet. It's a very simple sentence. There is no modifier. William Shakespeare is the subject, wrote is the verb in the past tense, and this is the object which he wrote, right? It's a noun basically, but it's the object. He wrote something, right? So William Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet. I want to modify. So I would modify what? William Shakespeare. I would modify Romeo and Juliet, right? So I would say uh, William Shakespeare. I have used WS as a short form. William Shakespeare, uh, the greatest, okay, dramatist of all time, right? William Shakespeare, the greatest dramatist of all time, wrote Romeo and Juliet, right? So it makes sense. Who is getting modified? The greatest dramatist of all time. Who's getting modified? William Shakespeare. And look, I have placed them together, right? So the modifier, basically, the modifier, right? This is basically the modified in the sense that what is getting modified? The modified and the modifier must be kept together, right? And if you want to modify, sir, I am facing issues today with the please upload it. Yes, I will upload it, don't worry. So William Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet, the greatest tragedy of all time, right? Or the greatest tragedy in the English drama, something like this. So what is it modifying? The greatest tragedy of all time. It is modifying Romeo and Juliet, right? This is modifying William Shakespeare. So that means wherever you place the modifier, the noun before it or after it gets modified, right, people? Correct? So this concept is clear to you about modifiers, right? Now I will give you a few sentences and see how it creates confusion. Okay, I will give you a few sentences and okay, I would say Sachin was born in Mumbai. I would say popularly known as the Little Master. Is this sentence correct? Full stop. This is a comma. Is this sentence correct? Or is this correct? Sachin, comma, popularly known as the Little Master, right? Correct? Comma, was born in Mumbai, right? Comma, the financial capital of India. Which is correct, people? Which is a better structure? And why? Second sentence looks better. Why? Why Deepak, Shreyash, Arushi, Ankur, Sukal, PG, everyone? Why do you think? So here, Sachin was born in Mumbai, popularly known as Little Master. Who is popularly known? Sachin, right? So shouldn't you be placing this close to Sachin? I mean, why should you place it to Mumbai? Because the noun is Mumbai. So I get a feeling that Mumbai is popularly known as the Little Master. But here, Sachin, popularly known as the Little Master, was born in Mumbai, the financial capital of India. So this is basically modifying Mumbai. This is basically modifying Sachin. I can also place it before Sachin. How can I do that? Known as the Little Master right? Sachin was born in Mumbai. Full stop. Am I right, people? I am right. Known as the Little Master, Sachin was, yes, popularly known as. I mean, I have missed the word popularly. Known as the Little Master, Sachin was born in Mumbai. Correct? So this is correct sentence, right? Known as Little Master, Mumbai was the birthplace of Sachin. Is it correct? Mumbai is the birthplace of Sachin. Why is it wrong? I will keep everything as it is. It's the birthplace of the Little Master. So what I have done, I have said known as the Little Master, comma Mumbai. What I am doing now, I am using a modifier known as the Little Master, but after the modifier, I am placing what? Mumbai, which is wrong. The modifier is pointing to Mumbai, which is wrong. I should have said known as the Little Master, Sachin was born in Mumbai, or known as the financial capital of India, Mumbai is the birthplace of Sachin, who is popularly known as the Little Master. So, people, are you getting the ideas of modifiers? How modifier modifies something that comes immediately before or after them? And modifiers can come anywhere, people. Please understand, modifiers can come anywhere. They can come at the start of the sentence, they can come in the middle of the sentence, they can come. I can also write this way, I can say, known as the financial capital of India, Mumbai is the birthplace of Sachin. Or I can say Mumbai, and then I can say, comma, known as the financial capital of India is the birthplace of Sachin. So I can start with the modifier, I can have Mumbai, or I can have Mumbai, I can place the modifier, right? So we have seen that modifiers can come anywhere. They can come at the start of the sentence, they can come in the middle of the sentence, they can come at the end of the sentence, but they must be placed beside the right noun. Correct, people? Am I right? The moment you change the placement, the moment you change the placement, you basically convey a different meaning, a meaning that is different than the intended meaning. Right, people? A meaning that is different than the intended meaning. Correct? Just give me. Okay. So, people, are we clear about this concept of modifiers? I hope my voice is good and clear to everyone. Okay, right? Known as the financial city of India, Mumbai is the birth searching population. Yes, 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 yes. Someone has sent me a comment, and I just replied to that. Okay. So, people, let's go back again, and okay, I will just write this down, people, to all of you. Okay. Now, we have seen some important things about modifiers. We'll recap everything. Modifiers can modifiers can be a word or a phrase, right? They can also be a clause. Correct, people? We have seen a word, adjective. We have seen a phrase, noun phrase. We have seen clauses like, and all of them have acted like modifiers. So, modifier, the second thing is must be placed right beside the thing they modify. Correct, people? We have seen this, right? The moment you have misplacement, it results in a different meaning. Correct. So, and secondly, modifiers must logically modify the right thing. If you might modify anything, but it might be illogical. I mean, you can say Mumbai, popularly known as Little Master, but is it logical? Mumbai might be popularly known as the financial capital, but how can Mumbai be known as known as the Little Master? It becomes illogical, right, people? So it's not enough to have modifiers. It is very important for you to have logical modification, because the moment your modification becomes illogical, the sentence becomes meaningless. Example of modifier of one single word. Adjective. Poor John died. So we said that poor is an adjective. It is modifying John, right? The way the little master modified Sachin Tendulkar, right, people? And modifiers can come anywhere in the sentence. Correct, people? Modifiers can come anywhere in the sentence. Now, look at this example. There is one very common example known as ing and ed modifier. Now look at this, right? Uh, I walked out of the room. Correct? I walked out of the room, comma, smiling at my teacher. Correct? I walked out of the room smiling at my teacher. What is this doing basically? Is smiling the verb, people, or is it not? Is smiling a verb or is it not? It's a non-final. Why it's non-final? Because the action is basically being done here. I is the subject, walked is the verb, and this is basically a modifier. And who is it modifying? It's modifying I, and that's why I have put a comma, because it cannot modify the room. It must modify something that has come earlier. So there are in certain cases modifiers that may not necessarily be placed right before the thing they modify. I can say smiling at my teacher, comma, I walked out of the room. So what is the modifier? Smiling at my teacher. Whom is it modifying? It is modifying the noun I. Smiling is not a gerund. It is basically an adjective. It's a participle, because it is not a noun. It is basically an action. It's a property. It's basically an adjective. I walked out, and what was I doing? Smiling at my teacher. So it is not a gerund. I have made videos on gerunds and infinitives and participles. It's there on YouTube, people. You just go through it. I have very well explained the concept of gerund. Smiling is a good thing. Now that's a gerund, because smiling is basically not a property, right? When you say smiling is a good thing, smiling is the subject, is the verb. Now smiling is a gerund. Why? Because it's acting like a noun. But when you say smiling at my teacher, yes, gerund acts like a noun. Now when you say smiling at my teacher, I walked out. Isn't smiling describing the person I, or describing the pronoun I? If you look at it, if you look at it the way it is given, isn't smiling a property of the person I, or the pronoun I? So if it's a property, then going by definition, any kind of property is basically an adjective, right? It's not partaking the function of a noun. So you would say I walked out and smiling at my teacher. So basically this was what I was, doing at that time. So it's not a noun, it is basically modifying the person I. Correct, people? So this is how we have to pick, and now I will go to the exercise without, because we can have more discussions on modifiers, but let me go to the question now straight away, because without questions it's difficult for you to understand and appreciate. Take the first question. Four sentences are given below. Choose the one in which the modifier is correctly placed. These are four sentences and it's a multiple choice. You tell me which one is correct. You will understand the modifier is correctly placed. So you have to find the errors in the other sentences as well. D, right? What is wrong with A, people? What is wrong with A? Vulcan. So Vulcan is the subject, right? Where is the verb? Where is the verb? Was. Right? Vulcan was prone to fall in love with various goddesses. So if I'm reading the RC, what I would do, I would say Vulcan was prone to fall in love with various goddesses. I would go to the next sentence. I would not read all the nonsense stuff that comes in between. Because if you spend the time reading all the nonsense stuff, then you will take more time to read. So it says Vulcan was prone to fall with the various goddesses in love. So who is in love? Is it the goddesses in love, or is it Vulcan was prone to fall in love? So can I say that this in love must come here? Yes, people. If I want to rectify this sentence, then what I would do, I would say that Vulcan was nonetheless prone to fall in love with various goddesses and not fall with various goddesses in love, as if he's falling on the floor while walking. So you see, people, modifiers change the meaning of the sentence, and this is the comical effect. So when you write, and if the modifier is not correctly placed, you basically create a comedy of errors. So it seems as if Vulcan is falling with various goddesses in love. Pranav, you are not attentive, it seems. So is this in love correctly placed here, or is this in love correctly placed here? Compare option D, this underlined part, with this underlined part, and tell me which is correct. This question is for Pranav. He wants it to get. So is it he was prone to fall with various goddesses in love, or he was prone to fall in love with various goddesses? I will come to the other part. We have not yet come to the answer, people. Please don't say A is D is the answer. What is but, by the way? But means basically accept. Correct? And what is sooty? Sooty means black. Correct? And forge means basically a place where forging is done. It's a place, okay? A place where forging is done. So, is but his sooty forge correct here, or is but his sooty forge correct? Compare D with C and tell me which is correct. Please compare D with C. Vulcan, in spite of his deformity, extreme ugliness, and well-known aversion to any home. Well-known aversion means dislike. Well-known aversion to any home except his sooty forge means what? Sooty means black and forge is a place. So you can compare home with place, right? But can you compare goddesses? Can you compare goddesses with sooty forge? I mean, I was prone to fall in love with this woman except my house. Would you say that way? I was prone to fall in love with various goddesses except this woman. So I can compare goddesses with women, but how can I compare goddesses with sooty forge, which is a place? So D does not make sense. C makes sense. What does C say? That Vulcan, in spite of his ugliness and aversion to any home except his sooty forge. That means he was averse to any home except the place where he lived. Forge is a place where forging is done. That's why vocabulary is very important, people. You know where forging is done? Forging is done in blacksmiths. Have you heard of the blacksmith? What does he do? He forges, right? So the place where he does this work is a forge. So if you say that, and Vulcan is the Greek god of metals. Vulcan is the Greek god of metals. He designs and he forges the weapons of all the other gods, and that's why Vulcan is very dark and ugly, and he always prefers to stay in his forge. And that's why the sentence C is correct. Why C is correct? Because Vulcan, in spite of his ugliness, deformity, and well-known aversion to any home except his sooty forge means what? He liked his sooty forge, but not any other home. Was nonetheless prone to fall in love with various goddesses. People, are we clear? The first sentence, the very first sentence was a very, very tough question. But this is what I do. And this is how my content is. My content is not a cakewalk. It's never a cakewalk. The kind of questions I design, I ensure that it's tough. Why? Because if you don't know tough questions, you will never know what you have learned. Yes, I lost. Just a moment, I am back. My connection is all of a sudden goes out. Anyways. One fact which emerges from these considerations is that no obstacle should be placed in the way of thought and its expression, nor yet in the way of statements of fact. Everything is clear, nothing is wrong here. In fact, if you are good at reading, you will find that there is definitely something wrong with C. It says it has recently become throughout Europe on account of which men suffer. So, is it men suffering because of Europe? Yes, people, I mean, this is what the meaning comes out. It has recently become throughout Europe on account of which men suffer. But men are not suffering because of Europe. So basically what I can do, they might be suffering because of a dangerous paradox. So how can it be? It has recently become, you remove this, you put a dangerous paradox. Correct? It has recently become a dangerous paradox on account of which men suffer imprisonment or starvation. So can I say that I must put a dangerous paradox here so that which is justified? It has recently become throughout Europe a dangerous paradox. It has recently become throughout the country a dangerous paradox on account of which men suffer imprisonment or starvation. Haven't I improved the sentence, people, by placing the modifier, by placing the noun close to what the modifier is modifying? Yes, people, are we clear about it? What about the others? There are 23 people here, and I can see only 4 or 5 responses. Pranav, Vishnu, Soham, Ashutosh, Niku, Sanchit. Okay, great. So let's go to the next. I will give you some good questions so that you don't have this. Uh, okay, this is eighth is a very good question. Please take the eighth one. It's a very, very good question. You will love it. Okay, Arushi, everyone has marked B. Okay, what is wrong with A? What is wrong with A? Difference between A and B. I want a good answer. Even though trading in ivory has been outlawed by someone. This is the correct way of structuring the idea, right? Trading in something has been outlawed by someone. So you would say that trading in certain goods has been outlawed by the Supreme Court. That is the correct way of writing, rather saying that trading by, as if the trading is done by agreement and not by the people. When trading will not be done by agreement, trading would be done by the countries. Yes, yes, correct. So A definitely goes out. B, what is wrong with C? What is often obtained illegally? Is it piano makers? What is often obtained illegally? If you look at here, often obtained illegally modifies what? Ivory. So ivory can be obtained illegally. I cannot obtain piano makers illegally. Right? So it's a funny sentence, right? You say that, even though trading in ivory has been outlawed by international agreement, some piano makers often obtain illegally, as if the piano makers are obtained illegally, which does not make sense. Yes, 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 yes. Arushi is correct. She is making some changes. She said that it should be ivory often obtained illegally and not. Correct. So you can make that C. What is wrong with D? The keys are obtained illegally. Again, it's a funny thing, right? How can you obtain the PN? Is the writer logically referring to? I mean, this is what we say logical. What is more logical? D is more logical or B is more logical? What would you try to obtain illegally? Ivory or piano keys? Great. So I will go to the next sentence. People take the. I hope you are appreciating the concept of modifier. The moment you change the placement, you change the meaning, right? Take the 13th question. People have marked D. Okay, so let's have a look here. People have marked B as well. D and B is D and B. So look at statement A. Introduced into local woodlands 10 years ago. What is introduced? Indigenous population. Of what? Endangered species. Is it correct, people? What is wrong with A? What is wrong with A, people? Of course, it is this whole thing is indigenous population of owl species. That's fine. The error is that you have introduced and then you say it is indigenous. What do you mean by indigenous, people? What is indigenous? Can anyone tell me indigenous? Something that hasn't come from outside. It has been there, it has been born there, it hasn't come from outside, it has developed locally. So when you say that sugarcane is the indigenous crop of India, that means sugarcane hasn't come from outside, it has developed and it has basically developed in India itself. So on the one hand you say it is indigenous, that means it hasn't come from outside, and then you say it is introduced into the local woodlands. So how can something that is indigenous be introduced? It's illogical, right? How can something that is indigenous be introduced from outside? So doesn't that contradict the whole logic of the sentence? Yes, people, yes or no, please tell me. If you look at 13th option A, it is illogical. It doesn't make any sense. So I would go to B now. The grey squirrel introduced into local woodlands 10 years ago threatens the indigenous population of an endangered owl species. Why? Because the squirrel's habitual stripping of the tree bark destroys the trees in which the owls nest. So it makes complete sense. What is wrong with D? What is wrong with D, people? It is not had destroyed, it is still destroying, right? The grey squirrel threatens the indigenous population. So when this is in the present tense, this is in the present tense. So because the squirrel's habitual stripping, it should be either has destroyed, right? Or it should be simply destroys. Has destroyed basically means what? It has just happened. Or it destroys basically means what? It is still going on. I mean, it is happening daily. Or it is happening by habit, by action, which is consistent. But had destroyed basically means it's a past perfect which is not related to anywhere to threatens. The two actions must go parallel. Okay, so people have marked D here. Let's go and have a look. Aided by the recent ability. So someone has been aided. Who has been aided? Is it the relationship or is it the scientists who have been aided? So this makes more sense, right? Aided by the recent ability to analyze samples of air trapped in glaciers, scientists now have a clearer idea. Right? So how would you frame a sentence? You would say that aided by CCTV camera, correct, comma, the police are able to nab thieves, right, more easily. Correct, people? So you can say aided by CCTV cameras, right? Aided basically means helped by. And when you say aided with, it means basically equipped with. But this aid is basically helping. Helped by CCTV. So aided by recent ability to analyze air samples, the A goes out. Aided by CCTV camera, the police are able to nab the thieves more easily. So this makes sense, right? Aided by recent ability to analyze samples, scientists now have a clearer idea. What is wrong with C, people? The recent ability to analyze samples of air trapped in glaciers, scientists now have a clearer idea. What's wrong with C? Can anyone tell me? What is wrong with statement C? Can anyone tell me? It's a very subtle modifier. Now I will just take a concept for a while, people, and that will make things clear to you. Correct? Uh, the first man to land on the moon, right? The first man to land on the moon, comma, uh, Who is the first man to land on the moon? Neil Armstrong, right? Neil Armstrong is still alive. Correct, people? It makes sense, right? The first man to land on the moon. Who is the first man to land on the moon? Neil Armstrong, right? And he's still alive. That makes sense, right? This is the modifier, and the modified item is Neil Armstrong. Everyone is correct with this, people? Can I say the ability to the ability to uh, the ability to repair medical equipments, right? So what should come after comma? The ability to repair medical equipment. What should come after the comma? The name of the ability, right? Correct. The ability to repair medical equipment, you must have the name of the ability, right? Correct. Or I would say the inability to open to others, comma, autism is spreading amongst children. Correct? Am I right, people? The inability to open to others, comma, autism. So what is the inability to open to others? Autism is the inability, right? That means basically autism is getting modified by what? The inability to open to others. Now I will go to my question and see how it changes the meaning. Uh, the recent ability to analyze samples. Is it the scientist that is the name of the ability? I mean, you say the recent ability, but if it's a recent ability, you please name this ability. Don't call this ability scientists. Are you getting my point, people? So are you clear like why it looks wrong to you? So my suggestion is that when you see a wrong thing, people, you must be adamant as to why that thing is wrong. Only then learning is possible. Learning is not possible simply by gut feeling, because if you always go by gut feeling, then you will reach a point where gut feeling will not work and you will go wrong. That is precisely why many students in verbal section, they always rely on gut feeling. They always rely on intuition. And that never fires. It might fire one day and you will score 95 percentile. The other day it will not fire and you will score a paltry 75-60 percentile. So rather than relying on gut feeling, you must rely on concepts. And this is how you learn the concepts. Are we clear about it, people? What is wrong with B? What is wrong with B, people? Tell me. Over the past 160,000 years, aided by the recent. So as if they have been aided over the past 160,000 years. I mean, how can someone be aided by recent ability over the past 160,000 years? It just doesn't make any sense. B goes out. So people, I hope you all are clear with what kind of impact modifiers can have on a sentence. They can utterly change the meaning of a sentence, and if you write and if you make or you design sentences in this way, then people will start laughing at you. I mean, this is what happens, right? So you should always be very careful while framing your ideas, because the slightest change here and there could lead to basically a gross error, right? Look at the 17th question and tell me what is the answer. Both are same. Never make that mistake of overlooking something. Do you see something here, people? Is there any difference between the two words? I deliberately did this just to teach you a lesson. For what is wrong here? What is the difference between these two words, people? Forbear basically means ancestors, correct? And forbear means what? To restrain, correct? So B goes out because it does not make any sense. To forbear means to restrain, to tolerate, right? So B goes out. Why does C go out? Archaeological evidence reveals that compared to their hunter-gatherer forebears, a poorly balanced diet. I mean, are you comparing a poorly balanced diet with hunter-gatherer forebears? Peoples is right, yes. Peoples means people is general and peoples means a group of people belonging to a specific community. That is peoples. Peoples means a group of people belonging to specific community. So if you compare hunter-gatherer forebears with a poorly balanced diet, then it basically is incorrect, right? You are comparing what? Compared to their hunter-gatherer forebears, a poorly, you can say compared to me, my parents are happy, right? Because you are comparing yourself with your parents. But you can't say compared to their hunter-gatherer forebears, a poorly balanced diet. I mean, that is not the right way. So C goes out, definitely. Are we clear about it, people? Why not D? That is my question. Why not D? Just give me a minute, people. Why not D? Sentence we have yet, and in the statement D we have and. So these are the two conjunctions. In the first we have used yet, and in the statement D we have used and. Correct. So it says here, archaeological evidence reveals that compared to their hunter-gatherer forebears, the early agricultural people ate a poorly balanced diet and had diet-related problems. Yet these people never returned. That means if they had this problem, then you must expect them to return to hunting and gathering, right? And therefore yet makes sense. Why? Because it is basically a contrasting idea. I had some problem and yet I did not call my parents. Because the general expectation is that if you have some problem, you must call your parents, right? So yet makes more sense in the given context. Because the sentence wants to say that the early agricultural people ate poorly balanced diet, right? And the hunter-gatherer forebears were basically hunters, right? So that is the reason why yet makes more sense compared to and. And because of the right conjunction, A brings out the correct meaning. Because when you use and, you should use and for similar ideas. When you are joining similar ideas, you can always use and. But when you are joining contrasting ideas or ideas that are contrary to expectation, then you can have but or you can have yet. You can use the word still. So even in sentence A, you can replace the word yet with the word still. You can say archaeological evidence reveals that compared to their hunter-gatherer forebears, the agricultural people ate a poorly balanced diet. Still, these people never returned to hunting and gathering. Still means basically, again, it's doing the same function as yet would have done, right? So is this clear to you people? Take the 20th question, the last question for the day. Take the 20th question. Some people have marked D. Okay. So let's have a look, sir. What would we post PDF? I will put it on FB. We can discuss. We can have a session wherein we can discuss the leftover questions. I will nevertheless give the PDF. People have marked D as the number and intensity of interactions between birds increases. Is increases the right word or should it be increase? What is the difference between these increase and increases? What is increasing, by the way? Two things are increasing, the number and intensity. So if two things are increasing, one is number and the other is intensity, then these are two things, right? It's not one idea. It is two different. These are two different ideas. So as the number and intensity of interactions between birds increase, why? Because these are two different things. They are not one unit. E goes out. As the number and intensity of interactions increase. Makes sense? As the amount, how can you have amount of interactions? I mean, you can have intensity, but how can you have amount? So B goes out. What is wrong with A, people? So, so increases the costs or so increase the costs. So C is the right answer. Right, people? As the number and as the number and intensity of interactions between birds increase, so increase the costs. C is the right answer. Costs is the subject and costs increase. Increase is the verb. The number and intensity is the subject and therefore increase. Increase is the verb. Everyone is clear with this, people? This was a good question. Among means many birds, between means groups of birds. Between is specifically used between two people. Between is specifically used between two things and among is used between many things. But then each bird, see, when you say between birds, that means basically two birds at a time. So when you say that there are many birds, but the interaction is happening only between two at a time, and that's why it has been used as between birds. So the relationship between many countries is not good. That means what? India Pakistan is one relationship, India Sri Lanka is the other relationship, Bhutan and India is one more relationship, like this. So you will say that a relationship between countries is not good these days. That makes sense, right? It all depends upon the context. So people, are we clear about it? If one option contained among, then you mark both the options correct. You will not have such options. You will not have such options, people. Okay, so it was a good session, people. I think I will wrap up here because it's 1.5 hours, and it becomes very difficult to teach online for more than one, particularly when you have to speak so much. It's difficult, right? It is difficult. So people, that's it for the day. Tomorrow we will have reading comprehension session.